I hope everybody is having a great day. This video is going to be part of my series titled The Permeation of Narcissistic Indoctrination. This is my personal account of my experiences in my life. I do feel drawn to share my experiences in hopes that I will be able to help other people identify the toxic nature and habits and interactions with a lot of the people within these types of family units. Okay, I think a lot of narcissistic traits are learned behaviors. I think a lot of them are handed down through generations, and me sharing my experiences is just my own personal account of what it feels like to be raised in a toxic environment like that. I have taken the role of the scapegoat within the family unit, and I'm fine with that because I am not somebody that is going to sit here and turn a blind eye to the dysfunction. I'm just not going to do that. It's extremely unhealthy to be raised in a situation like that. And when you start speaking up about the things that are wrong, all the negativity and everything else is directed to you. You're blamed for absolutely everything. The projection is a real thing. And it happens because these people are so broken inside that they cannot look at themselves. Okay. A lot of the time, these people are avoiding their own personal traumas. And instead of embracing what has happened and dealing with it and working through that and trying to learn from the experience, it manifests into seeping down through the children and your children's children. And pretty soon it becomes something that nobody has any control over, okay, until you get somebody like myself in a situation where they're just not going to tolerate it, okay? If you've watched any of my other videos, I was adopted by the people that raised me when I was 2 months old. My biological mother was 15 years old when she had me. I honestly don't think she knows who my father is. She has had a lot of trauma on her own end. I do have empathy and sympathy towards that. However, that does not change or condone how she is as a person, okay? I met her, and I'm not making excuses for the behavior either, because she's got her own issues that have definitely affected my younger brothers, okay? But she basically told me when I was like 18, 19 years old that she hated me. And, you know, with my particular situation with the people that raised me, I think I was put in the family unit with good intentions, because I think I would have much rather preferred to have a father figure that's narcissistic than a mother figure that was narcissistic. Although these people have kind of the same behavior traits and character traits, they're two completely different things. Men and women think different. I mean, they're just different in general. So mannerisms, things like that. There's a lot of covert narcissism I've seen with women in particular. My father himself is a covert narcissist, but they're two very, very different things. I think a woman is supposed to learn how to be a good mother and a woman from her mother. And if you are a woman and you don't have a good foundation or somebody to show you how to behave properly, I mean, life can get very hard. But I would have much rather preferred that my father was a narcissist, because I can't imagine what it would have been like being raised by a woman that secretly despises you and can't show you any love or affection. You know, I think that would be hard to learn how to be affectionate and loving towards your own children when you've never had that demonstrated for you. But So I was adopted by the people that raised me. My parents are, my mom, I think, was like 39, 38 when she adopted me. So my parents are about 40 years older than me. Okay. My dad has passed. He passed away this September, in 2025. And in one of my other videos, I did say I felt a little bit of relief because I did. My dad was remarried, and his second wife is such a peach. She was trying to continue the cycle of abuse that was demonstrated to her by my dad with my daughter's family. Okay, her on her dad's side, my dad's wife was attempting to do that, and my daughter's dad said he didn't want to, feed into any of that, and that's pretty eye-opening, and that's just confirmation to me that I have been right this whole time about who was starting the issues. Because the moment that that person is removed from the situation, now all of a sudden, oh, none of y'all have any problems with me. Oh, okay, it's like that. Right. It's because my father was the one that instigated most of the problems within my life. I'm not going to sit here and get on here and say that with the permeation of narcissistic indoctrination that, Mike's life experiences are all my parents' fault, because it's not. Okay. I have made conscious decisions to put myself in the situations that I have, and I have had repercussions from some of the things that I did. And I am speaking that from a place where I have had to learn the hard way. I've had to learn relationships the hard way. I've had to learn right from wrong the hard way. I've had to struggle in my life. But I'm glad I did it when I was young, because I saw what my father just went through at the end of his life. And it was kind of bittersweet for me. I'm not going to lie. Um, being the scapegoat within the family unit, you are subjected to all the projection and the toxicity of everybody else's problems. And you are made to be the person that is the root of all the problems when you're not. So that is weight in and of itself that you have to carry, carrying everybody else's burdens and their crosses, pretty much. And it's hard to speak up in dynamics like that because you've been painted as the crazy person. And my dad did a fantastic job at painting me and my mother, and my daughter, actually, as being crazy. If anybody had any kind of common sense and had even a thought to think, that's interesting that all three of these people are crazy. Like, nobody, and even if they did, nobody said anything about it. It's interesting. I understand some mental health problems are, handed down genetically. I get that. Okay. But I was adopted. I have nothing to do with this entire bloodline. You feel me? So we all three can't be crazy. You know what I mean? But, it's just been a shit show. I'm going to try to work on my language too. I am a work in progress, like we all are, and that is something that I am really trying to work on. But it is very difficult to contain my language when I am talking about this foolery, okay? But yeah, my dad did a great job at painting me as the crazy person. And at the end of his life, he actually had a woman. I think my dad realized at the very, very end that his wife really didn't love him, that she was just after his finances, and he found himself in an abusive situation. My dad felt like it was the right thing to do to keep my child from me because he didn't like my choices with the men that I was attracted to. I found myself in an abusive relationship at one point in my life, and I thought the healthy thing for me to do at that time would be to temporarily sign my rights over to my dad for my daughter, because I did not want to put her in a situation where she's in danger. I think that is a smart thing to do with anybody. However, I did not know at the time that my father was a narcissist, okay? And I had no idea that I was never going to get her back because I gave her to another abusive individual, unbeknownst to me, okay? But my dad would use my choices in men against me. Oh, well, you were in an abusive relationship. So I thought it was a little bittersweet at the end of his life that he was in the same situation that I was in. But, you know, like I stated already, I would have much rather preferred to have my life experiences happen when I am young because I can learn from it and mold my life and my future from what I've learned. Okay. He was never given that opportunity. But, you know, those are also consequences of running from yourself, basically. I think had he been able to work on the traumas that he had when he was a young child, I think if he was able to have different coping skills, he might have been able to change the trajectory of his life. Okay. And that all kind of correlates back to you can't run forever. And if you run forever, you find yourself in situations like my father was in, and he can't undo anything that he's done. My father was a very selfish person. And it's really hard, you know, just being raised by people that are so much older than you. The generation gap is just insanity. Like the time periods are completely different. I think a lot of people are lacking morals nowadays, but it is very, very different being raised in the 40s versus the early 2000s, late 1990s. The time periods are just different, okay? So that was definitely trying in my childhood to, I can't relate to anything that these people are talking about. And then on top of that, I'm getting blamed for things. I remember my parents have always had marital problems. They both contributed to that equally, you know. But I remember like in the early 90s, they wanted to go to counseling and they put me in counseling and I had no idea why the hell I was there. They would go to their little counseling sessions and then they would send me across the hall with another therapist and I would have to talk to her and she'd ask me how I was doing and everything. And I have never been somebody that's just going to divulge information to people. So the fact of the matter that I'm even getting on here in the first place on YouTube and all these platforms to share my experiences says a lot about my personal growth. There is a very fine line with what you need to be sharing with people. I am just going to say that really quick. But I've never been comfortable talking to anybody about anything really because I've never been around anybody that could give me any positive feedback. But yeah, that was one of my early childhood memories was watching that. They would fight all the time. And honestly, I think those things contributed to why I was attracted to the people that I was attracted to, you know? I was trying to find something that made sense because when you're seeing relationship dynamics demonstrated to you that are unhealthy and you know there's something wrong with that, any person is going to try to figure out what they could do different. And that's all I was doing. And my father basically used everything that I've ever done against me. When he taught me, both of them taught me absolutely nothing. I could count on one hand probably what they taught me to do. My mother taught me how to do laundry, and my dad taught me how to drive a stick shift. And he told me, don't be late to work. You need to be 15 minutes early. Okay. That is probably all I have learned from my parents, you know, and I think that's a generational thing. It's like back then they'd have these kids and either your kids are raising your other kids or, you know, you just turn them loose and let them figure it all out, you know. That same thing pretty pretty much does not apply to now, okay? But yeah, he held all of my choices against me. And I think deep down inside, I think to a degree he was a little envious of me because I did take the chance and try to do what I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, I mean, he is going to have to deal with the repercussions of his own actions in the life after this one. But yeah, it was really, really difficult being raised by people that you can't relate to, people that are in a toxic situation with each other. At least they both kind of like their jobs, I think, They stayed pretty separate. I think at the end of the day, my mother was the one that raised me. My father definitely did what he wanted to do. He traveled a lot for his job. That was definitely a position that he fought for because I don't think he wanted to be at home. Some parents like the idea of being a parent, but are actually not good at parenting. And I think that was kind of what both of my parents did. I know my mom and my dad, they wanted to have children and were not able to, so that is why I was adopted in the first place. But I think sometimes when you are with somebody and you're having marital problems and you're just not on the same page and there's always conflict and you want to have children, maybe that's indication from God or the universe or whatever that maybe you shouldn't be having kids with this person. Okay. And I think the fact that my parents stayed married, when they probably should have gotten divorced, has contributed to why I've had a lot of speed bumps in my life trying to figure things out. I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about my mother just because she was the one that raised me. She did put the effort in. She still puts the effort in. I give back to her at this point. Because I also do know that she did recognize that she was in a toxic situation. She maybe didn't know the extent of it, but she is able to reflect. A lot of narcissistic parents are not able to reflect. And if they do reflect, they certainly are not going to change any of their behavior patterns. Okay, narcissistic parents are doing what they want to do for them and they don't care who they hurt in the process. Okay, it takes a really sick individual to destroy your children's relationships. A tree by its fruits, okay? And when you have people demonstrating behaviors like that are just destructive and toxic and selfish, and they lack empathy and lack sympathy, that is a sign that they are not fighting for God's team and what is the right thing to do. But it's just unfortunate, a lot of the things that I've had to learn on my own that were not taught to me. I taught myself how to cook. I taught myself different skill sets. I guess there was a little bit of support here and there, but my parents were definitely focused more on their dynamic within their relationship than they were trying to mold me into a functional adult human being, okay? But these people just, I don't know. I think if you find yourself in situations like this, or you're married to somebody that you probably shouldn't be married to, please, please, please rethink what you're doing to your children. Because no kid needs to be raised by parents like my father. No parent should ever do a lot of the things that my parents did to me. And if you fully don't want to have any children, don't get with somebody that does want to have children. There's nothing wrong with not having any kids. Some people are not cut out to have children. And I've noticed that a lot with the two people that I did have kids with. I noticed that they are not really a good fit for having children. And it's unfortunate that once you're like kind of shown dysfunction like that and you're trying to get out of it, I almost feel like it kind of pulls you back in somehow, some way, because you're familiar with it. So when you're in relationships that would be deemed healthy and there's no tension, there's no conflict, everything is going okay, if you are an unhealed individual, the fact that there's nothing wrong is going to feel foreign to you, and it's going to feel intimidating, and then that can definitely start problems, right? Because it's almost like you kind of feed off of the negativity to a degree, and because that's what you're familiar with, right? But after I had my son, like I'm very grateful that God allowed me to fully wake up from the situation. I am never going to forget when I realized that my father was the one that was instigating every single problem I have ever had with other people. And when I told him that he was actually the problem, I mean, the look, we were talking about something, and I said, you know what I think? And he started walking away from me, and I literally said, you're the problem. And how he turned around and glared at me, and that little smirk that he had, he knew exactly what he was doing. And it was kind of like a look like, oh, you finally figured it out. Oh, okay. Well, now this is what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z. I completely cut my father off. And you know what? When I fully removed my energy from that situation, he only lived for another couple of years. Because you know what? In situations like that, when you're the scapegoat, most of the time, these people are not energetically sound or positive enough to create anything positive, right? So they're going to feed off of other people's energy, right? Once you remove that source of energy from dynamics like that, they tend to collapse, right? And that's exactly what happened. And you know what? That's not my problem. But I fully removed myself from that situation, and all the chips started falling. So that was the smartest thing I ever did, was remove myself from that situation. He has done irreparable damage to relationships at this point. And I hope one of these days, the people that sided with my father end up finding these videos and seeing the things that I've said. Because I know most of the time, people that kind of go with a narcissist don't want to cause ripples. And I think that was exactly what my daughter's dad did. He didn't want to cause problems, but then he realized, oh, well, we can just talk shit about her. So we're just going to project all of our stuff onto her, and we're going to act like nothing's wrong. Because that's what narcissistic people do too, right? But I think, I just hope that eventually everybody's going to see it for what it really was. And I don't care. I don't care. I hope you know what you partook in at this point. And then my dad's family, who? I just want to know who started this chain of events, because, you know, one of my dad's sisters does not talk to him. And I had always wondered why. And now I'm starting to think, like, she probably removed herself because she saw that her older brother was just like one of her parents. I swear, I think that's probably what it was. And then my dad's other sister, just, he tells her bits and pieces. My dad puts down everybody else to make himself look better than the person that he actually is. So God only knows what she believes, you know, but I just hope that everybody sees the toxicity for what it is. I know my parents have done quite a bit of different things to me, but what my father did really shaped a lot of my mannerisms, because I didn't learn anything, you know. It shaped my life path to a degree, you know. He looked put together. You know, you got your stability financially, you have your house, you have all this other stuff. It's a very, you know, a physical way to look at things, right? When somebody presents themselves well, you don't tend to question their spirituality. You know, my dad looked good on paper, but he was dead inside. And it definitely reflected in what he did to his family. The thing, and you know, before it was me, it was my mother. I still don't know how that woman held on for as long as she did. 40 years getting put down like that and talked to and painted like you're the crazy person is just insanity to me. It took me about 34 years to wake up from that situation. But as soon as I figured out what was going on, I got out of there. And if you're a scapegoat too, I would highly suggest rethinking your situation, because it's not going to get better. As a matter of fact, I think it always gets worse, especially when you're staying there. Because I almost feel like you're enabling these people to be dysfunctional. And they've already taken advantage of the fact that you are empathetic. They use your good traits against you, is what they do. If you're an empathetic person, they manipulate conversations and people and places and things to guilt trip you, to make it seem like, oh, well, you know, if you cared about me, you wouldn't do this, or, you know, just little snarky, sneaky things like that. Okay. But I would highly suggest that you rehash your situation, because the only thing that can fix these people, if there is a way to fix them, is going to be letting go and letting God. Narcissism is definitely a spiritual thing. It is. I think avoiding problems and trauma can lead you down a path to becoming narcissistic. I think it opens up a door spiritually somewhere to let entities that like to be in control into your life, right? And I also think envy can also start leading you down a path of self-destruction too. Yeah, I don't know. You know, my dad, I remember when I first bought the car that I have right now, I left one day. I needed to get a car and I had the money for it. And I went and got a car, and I was gone like the whole day from his house. And I came back and with the car, and the look on his face that I had actually done something for myself. It was just a look of utter disgust, to be honest with you. It's like, ugh. And you know what? What could he do? He can't make me not get the car. You know, I've learned a long, long time ago not to say very much of anything to any of them, because I just had a feeling. I knew there was something else wrong. I didn't quite know what it was. But like I said, you know, my parents would always project their marital problems onto me. When they would have marital problems, my mom and my dad would go through my personal belongings. I used to write a lot in a journal about what I was experiencing, and they both read it. And ever since then, I was like, nope, I'm not telling these people anything ever again. I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to write it down. I am not sharing any personal thoughts, aspirations, nothing with these people. And I haven't. And that's something that's been kind of hard with my mother too. If you've seen any of my other videos, she is definitely battling her own demons. Specifically the spirit of religion. Honestly, I think when you are somebody that is progressing, you have monitor spirits around you all the time. And I unfortunately have to be honest and admit that that spirit is definitely a monitoring spirit that is operating through her with the things that I'm doing. So I still have to be quiet about everything that I'm doing, because I cannot fully trust the situation, you know. And whatever you do after you leave a narcissistic dynamic like this, do not ever go back. It's not going to be any different than it was when you were there. It's just not. You know, my mom did get remarried, and she was actually happy, and I did help her out with her husband when his dementia started progressing. You know, I have given back to her. because I think out of both of them, she's the one that deserved my energy. And I kind of figure, if my dad really wanted me there, for one, he would have worked through his own problems. And two, instead of being told what to do, maybe he could have made his own decisions. That way he would have been a little bit more understanding when I was making my own, because he could relate to it. But I think if he really wanted me there, he would have talked about me a little bit better to everybody else. That is how I look at that situation. I did not go to my father's funeral. For one, I wasn't invited. I was indirectly invited. Okay. My dad's current wife reached out to my daughter's family, whom she knows that I have no contact with, and let them know when the funeral was. And then they kind of just passed it along down the line through my daughter. And then she let me know, no, bitch, you have my fucking phone number, and you could have called me. You could have let me know when my dad was sick. You could have let me know when he was in the hospital. You could have done a whole lot of other fucking things that you chose not to do. So I'm definitely not going to go put myself in a situation where I have to be in the same fucking room with these toxic motherfucking people ever again. But yeah, if he wanted me there, he would have definitely treated the situation a little bit different. The last thing I said to my father before he passed away, I said, this is kind of entertaining for me, because it is. Now you know what I have gone through. And it's unfortunate because you're at the end of your life and you cannot undo anything. Your wife has completely isolated you from absolutely everybody. You can't even contact a lawyer if you really wanted to. She exerted her little power of attorney, whoop, whoop, whoop. Well, you can't help yourself now. And then the people that you really needed the help from actually came to see you at the hospital, and we couldn't do anything because you made us all look incompetent. I mean, if anybody gains anything from this video, learn from other people's mistakes. If you know what they're doing is not healthy, don't do it. If you saw something in their life that didn't work out, heed that. Definitely don't run from your problems. And if you know you have a toxic family and you're not like that, I would get out of it as soon as possible. It is hard walking away from people. But once you do it a couple times, it's real easy after that. If you don't deal with the trauma from a narcissistic relationship or from a family, it will keep continuing to reoccur with other people. I think these types of spirits follow you around and operate through other people. I think that movie Fallen with Denzel Washington definitely shows how entities kind of work through in and out, jump in and out of people, exactly how they really do, But if I happen to make another video about some of the other things that I've gone through with my parents being 40 years older than me, I will definitely do that. But kind of having, it's hard trying to remember things that are valid, but you just don't really want to think about. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I did want to just try to get another video out. I do have a little bit of time today. I'm about to start working on all of my finals for my classes, but yeah, I had a little bit of some time. Yeah, so yeah. But if anybody ever wants to talk to me, you can always, leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you or whatever. I am trying to update all my contact information, emails, whatever, on my page. I will get around to that when I have some time to actually invest into it. But yeah, there is definitely going to be more part to this story because, like I said, being shown that a toxic relationship is how it should be when it shouldn't be like that at all has led me into some interesting relationships that I have definitely learned a lot from, for sure. But yeah, there's that. But I hope everybody has a good day, and I'll get back on here when I can. Thanks.